Welcome to another episode of the SportsBros podcast, featuring the Almighty B Live, the Money Man Scotty D, and your host, the head of creative, Eddie Cool. And without any further ado, let's give it up for the SportsBros.
Hey there, sports fans. Welcome to the SportsBros podcast. This is the Money Man, Scotty D, and I'm flying solo this week there, gang. That's right. This is going to be a Scott's Thoughts type of edition of the SportsBros podcast. My partners have taken a little time off here. Eddie Cool's out flying around the country doing some family stuff. And B Live, I believe, is in hibernation. Don't confuse that with quarantine. I think he's actually just taking the whole fall winter to sleep it off. But actually, we'll be back together. We'll get those guys back in with me here next week. So this week, it's just me giving you some of Scott's thoughts. And like the SportsBros, we're down to one in the NFL. One unbeaten team remaining. College football said hello and welcome back to the Big Ten, while the UFC sadly said goodbye to one of their all-time greats. All that took place since the last time I talked to you. But first, if you are not watching the World Series, and there's a good chance you're not because ratings seem to be down this year, but if you are not watching the World Series, you are missing out. The Tampa Bay Rays and the LA Dodgers are putting on a show. They are basically taking turns winning games through the first 5 games, which puts the Dodgers one win away from claiming their first World Series title since 1988. And if you stayed up late Saturday night to watch that game, that was an absolute classic. That game had a lot going on in it. Every inning there was excitement in that game, folks. So you had home runs, you had controversy on a play with Max Muncy falling off of second base. Max Muncy, by the way, he's laying claim to be the World Series MVP should the Dodgers win. This guy is coming up big time after time. But Game 4, you had a wild one. You had both teams taking turns with the lead. You had managers with the different pitching strategies. And then it came down to the closer of the Dodgers, Kenley Jansen, trying to come in and seal the deal. You just had the feeling, him coming in such a wild game like this, that it wasn't just going to be over in the 9th inning. And sure enough, the Rays get their best hitter, Randy Arozarena, comes to the plate, has a great at-bat, doesn't chase out of the zone, walks, brings up Brett Phillips, who has not had a hit in a month. And I'm sure by now you've seen the crazy finish. He gets the base hit. The center fielder, Chris Taylor, comes in, bobbles the ball. Muncy has the weird throw to home. Arozarena falls down trying to score, come around to score. The ball gets away from the catcher, and Arozarena slides in, pats home plate, and you got Brett Phillips running around like an airplane in the outfield. It was a classic. It was a thriller, 8-7. That evened the series up. And that was huge because right there, if the Dodgers hold on and get Phillips out, they would be probably already planning the parade today. Instead, that tied to the series of 2. Then the Dodgers on Sunday night with I believe the score is 4-2. They win, and they are now one game away from claiming the World Series championship. I tell you, we talked before, my bros and I, about how this COVID year of 2020 had just everything got turned upside down, and having baseball come back when it did over the summer brought a little bit of normalcy and stability. And I think the playoffs this year have been plenty fun to watch. It also has provided some stability. But man, I tell you, the World Series has been, to me, I've looked forward to watching each and every game, and it brings Clayton Kershaw back to the forefront again. Clayton Kershaw has been one of the best pitchers of our generation. However, when you think of Clayton Kershaw, you have tendency to think of the postseason failures. And that's not always fair, but that's the way it goes whenever you're paid millions of dollars to be the best and perform like the best during the biggest stage. Got me thinking, is there another athlete comparable to Clayton Kershaw? And I started thinking a little bit how John Elway was perceived earlier in his career. You start thinking of John Elway, and you typically think of the drive against Cleveland, the multiple comeback wins. You think of the helicopter spin in the Super Bowl, and him walking away at the top of his game. Elway walked away after back-to-back Super Bowl wins, kind of the fairy tale ending. But early in his career, Elway was known for some of his shortcomings in the postseason. It wasn't always his fault. He got crushed by the Giants in the Super Bowl. He got crushed by the Redskins in the Super Bowl, and Doug Williams had the historic second quarter performance. Joe Montana crushed him in the Super Bowl. So it's not all his fault. I'm not saying that Elway was looked at as a complete postseason failure, but at one point he was 0-3 in Super Bowls. Now you got Clayton Kershaw, and he had his shortcomings in the past. He's been roughed up a few times. You go back to the 2017 World Series, and he got roughed up by the Astros, and we now know that they knew what was coming. They knew he was going to throw. The Astros were cheating. So Clayton Kershaw looking for a bit of redemption here, and he went out and he pitched Game 1 and gave a great performance. The Dodgers win the first game. He went out and started Game 5. I think he went 5 2/3, had a pretty good showing. He was scuffling through, got out of a couple jams, and then they took him out and brought in Dustin May, the guy with the flowing red hair, and it was actually... I questioned some of Dave Roberts' moves. That ended up working out pretty well because he got Dustin May back in the mix too, should they need him again. But the Clayton Kershaw now is one game away from claiming his first ring, and should he do that, then a lot of that past stuff will go away. You'll start thinking more of Kershaw as, yeah, he ended up being a champion. And who knows, the Dodgers, they're young enough, they can be back here again next year. Now, I'm putting the cart before the horse. They haven't won the World Series yet. They still have another game to win. Game 6, Tuesday night. I believe we're going to have Blake Snell pitching for the Rays against Tony Gonsolin for the Dodgers. And then should it go Game 7, we're going to have the classic matchup, Walker Buehler for the Dodgers and Charlie Morton, most likely for the Rays, if we get that far. But if we do, then Clayton Kershaw surely will be getting a little bit of redemption here. And hopefully, for his case, the perspective will be changed, where he will be able to sort of put some of those demons behind him from the past postseason failures. So anyway, the Dodgers are one game away from taking it. The Rays trying to stay alive. Game 6 on Tuesday night. And again, if you have not been watching the World Series, don't miss the last game or 2 games left, because it has been a wildly competitive, entertaining, high-pressure series. Check it out. World Series, Game 6 on Tuesday night. All right, let's turn our attention to the NFL here, and another wild weekend. I'll just go ahead and get this out of the way, because those of you who know me know that I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, and every week I'm in here telling you why they've been terrible and why they're losing. It's just that they're terrible, guys. I mean, I don't really have to break down defensive shortcomings and the injuries and all that, but they made the Washington football team look dominant on Sunday, losing 25-3 to a team that's got plenty of problems of their own. The football team's got Kyle Allen out there, and he looked like a Pro Bowler against the boys on Sunday. He looked good. Washington still has a lot of work to do, but the Cowboys they're atrocious. My biggest regret right now is that they have 2 wins, because they're not going to win the NFC East. A week ago, we thought maybe they still could win 5 or 6 games and win that division. That's not going to happen, because I don't know that they can win another game, and I'm sorry that they've already won the ones that they have, because that takes them out of the running for the top pick. Because the Jets, they're not going to win this year. They fought the Bills gallantly on Sunday. The Bills winning 18-10 without scoring a touchdown. The Jets fought them, but the Jets are getting the top pick. They're not going to win this year. But the Cowboys are looking almost as bad as they are. They're directionless. They're lost. And again, we don't have to go too far into it. By now, I'm sure you've seen over and over again how they have no fight, and Andy Dalton got knocked out by Redskin defensive player John Bostic, and they didn't stand up for Andy Dalton. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's terrible. It's a lousy time to be a Dallas Cowboy fan, and it's not going to change. So let's move on. Usually Eddie Cool will ask me, what have we learned this week when it comes to the NFL? And I think I'm just going to go ahead and start with that. And what we learned this week is that it seems like the Steelers are the biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC. The Steelers went to Tennessee, both teams undefeated this past Sunday, and came out of there with a 27-24 victory. It got a little dicey there. The Steelers had jumped out to a lead, and the Titans, on their way back, had Steven Gostkowski miss a field goal that would have tied the game. Roethlisberger threw a couple picks, including a big one at the end of the game there that the Steelers were trying to put the game away. But the fact that they went in there and they actually held Derrick Henry to 75 yards, which if you can do that, I think you would say that's a win for us to keep Derrick Henry in check, make Tannehill beat you. And Tannehill had a respectable day as well. But the Steelers, they're loaded with weapons right now. You know, this Claypool, the rookie from Notre Dame, Chase Claypool, he's been the one that's been on fire the past couple weeks. This week it was Juju Smith-Schuster, had 9 grabs for 85 yards. Deontay Johnson had 9 catches and 2 touchdowns. Eric Ebron's getting involved. Connor's getting involved. The Steelers are just executing a well-balanced game plan and, as usual, playing pretty good defense. So now they got to go to Baltimore. I think it's in Baltimore next week. The Ravens coming off of a bye week. I'd say the Ravens have a good chance to win that game. This is going to be a very interesting battle, but win or lose that game, I think the Steelers are establishing themselves as the biggest threat right now to knock Kansas City off to prevent them from going back to the Super Bowl a second time. Kansas City, once again, dominant this week with a 43-16 win over the Broncos. In the NFC, we lost our last undefeated team there as well, as the Seahawks went down on Sunday night to the Cardinals. Seahawks well ahead in this game and let the Cardinals come back. So what I'm learning here is that the teams that we were thinking in the NFC that had some of the better chances going to the Super Bowl, or to at least the deep playoff runs, you look at the Saints and the Seahawks, and both teams seem to have some defensive struggles. The Saints got away with a 27-24 victory over Carolina this past week. They are a little suspect defensively. They got some Michael Thomas issues going on. I really don't know all that's going on with that at this point, so I'm not going to try to sound like I'm super educated on this stuff. I'm just throwing out some meaningless opinions here. The Packers looked good this week, winning 35-20. But guess who's looking really, really good right now? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the people that were telling me that Tom Brady was the system quarterback, well, that system is looking pretty good in Tampa Bay right now. He threw for 364 yards and 4 touchdowns on Sunday. He also pulled one of his classic QB sneaks, and this is at the Raiders. They're at Vegas, so this is against a good team. Now they're going to add Antonio Brown to the mix, and it seemed last year when they were both together for that short time in New England that they had a little bit of a rapport. So adding Antonio Brown, who I would not be disappointed if he'd blow his knee out in the first game. Sorry, that's mean to say, but I'm not an AB fan. Tom Brady seems to be. I know Bruce Arians initially had said last year even that he would not be a good fit for their locker room. But now, maybe Brady's giving him a little elbow nudge. Hey, we could use this guy. Anyway, it's just one more weapon for Brady. And, you're thinking now, who are the top teams in the NFC? Seattle's defense, suspect. New Orleans defense, suspect. Green Bay looks good, and Tampa dismantled them last week. So here we are, 6 or 7 games into the season, depending on your bye week, and Tampa Bay is looking right now to be the strongest team in the NFC. So San Francisco also laid claim to rebound. I know we kind of were starting to write them off a little bit a few weeks back. They had a terrible loss earlier this season to the Dolphins, but they went to New England and won 33-6. The Cam Newton thing is starting to not look so good up there right now. I don't know what's going on with Cam. Maybe he's never fully recovered. I know he had a really nice Sunday night game against Seattle earlier in this year, and now he missed the game because of COVID. He doesn't look right. He doesn't look good. He's throwing bad balls. He's throwing behind guys. He's throwing balls short at guys' feet. Cam doesn't look good. I'll tell you who did look good. Baker Mayfield. Now, this is kind of crazy the Browns were able to pull off a victory over Cincinnati. And granted, Cincinnati's not a great team, but they're improving. But Baker Mayfield threw 21 straight completions on Sunday after losing or Odell Beckham Jr. for the game. And Odell Beckham is going to be gone now. He's out for the season with a knee injury. Ironically, suffered on a Baker Mayfield interception. But you got to wonder if this is maybe for Baker Mayfield's case, addition by subtraction. You know what I'm saying here is that Baker maybe was feeling a little bit too much pressure time to get Beckham the ball. These guys just never seem to develop a ton of chemistry. Baker Mayfield may be better off without him. Either way, I think that's probably the last we'll see of Beckham in Cleveland. It just hasn't really worked. He's going to be gone for a year. I mean, we're looking late next year before he comes back from this type of injury. At that point, he's going to be coming up on his 30-year-old season, right around that age. I think Beckham still has a lot to offer, but I just don't think it's going to be in Cleveland. I think that's going to be done. And then we had this strange situation with the Falcons and Lions game. Trailing 16-14 with a minute and some change, Todd Gurley scores the go-ahead touchdown. Except that he didn't want to score the go-ahead touchdown. He tried to stop, and I've never seen this exactly go down the way it did. He tried to stop himself from going in. He fell on the goal line, and basically the two Lions players celebrated. The one's signaling touchdown, and the other's pointing to the goal line just to let the referee know, hey, that dude scored on us, because that was the only way Detroit was going to be able to get the ball back and win the game. And that's what happened. Now, after the game, Gurley was mad at himself. He told reporters he was upset that his momentum took him into the end zone. He could have fallen at the 1 yard line. The Falcons could have milked the clock down because Detroit was out of timeouts at that point, kicked the game-winning field goal, and won 17-16. They didn't. They lost 23-22. But you can't put that on Gurley whenever he actually gives you more points, and then your defense can't hold that lead for the last whatever it was minute, 50-some seconds left in the game. So that's what happens when two terrible teams play each other. But what we did learn this week is that the Steelers, good. Cowboys, bad. Let's move on, shall we? So this past weekend I was in Myrtle Beach, and I was walking Saturday morning. I went for a little walk down the beach, and as I'm walking down the beach, I come across this lady sitting in a chair with sunglasses and an Alabama hat on. And I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to it. As I came upon her, she yells, "Oh, roll Tide!" And I looked, because I didn't know she was talking to me. I looked around. There was nobody on the other side of me, so I looked at her again. "Roll Tide!" she yelled at me, and I just responded with a little fist pump and a roll Tide. I mean, I had on a plain white T-shirt and a plain, it was like a faded reddish hat. Nothing indicating I was a fan of anyone else or of the Tide. I don't know. Couldn't figure it out. So I came back. I went for walking. As I came back the opposite way, I was wondering if she was going to do it again. And as I came up close to her, I thought, if she yells at me again, I'm going to ask her why exactly she's yelling "Roll Tide" to me. You know, there's thousands of people on the beach. And as I got up close to her, she yelled, "Roll Tide!" And I just changed my mind. I thought, no, if I ask her why she said that, surely she'll tell me. So I just gave her the old "Roll Tide" right back and kept on going. I wonder if you're an Alabama fan, if that's all you got, man. It sucks that, like as a Pittsburgh guy, the Steelers are good, and I'm not a Steeler fan, but when their season ends and you turn your sights to the Penguins and you turn your sights to the Pirates and that, but Alabama, they just have to wait for their 10 or 11 games a year, and then they go out and destroy people. I mean, what fun is that? Is that, I guess, Uncle Max is a big-time Alabama fan, and he's a loyal listener and a friend of the show. I guess I guess that's super fun to go destroy someone every week. And they did that again this week. Bama, college football's back in full force here, and the usual suspects sit in the top five. Clemson's number one, Bama two. Ohio State, they had a first quarter challenge from Nebraska, then they steamrolled them. They're at 3. Notre Dame destroyed my Pitt Panthers at 4. And Georgia, who gave Alabama a good first half challenge last week, and ultimately they got blown out, they're at 5. Oklahoma State has moved into the 6th spot. And at 20, Coastal Carolina University. Folks, we can only hope for that dream matchup that Coastal keeps rising the ranks. And we get the national championship game. Coastal versus Clemson, the all-Carolina showdown. Oh, isn't that just a dream for all of us to get to that point? I think the Pac-12 is still waiting to begin. I think they start on November 7th, but the Big Ten has returned. And again, the usual suspects are right there at the top of the board. Penn State fell in a wild one to Indiana this past week. Virginia Tech got upset. But college football is starting to look very familiar. Again, Clemson, number one in the country. All right, so this past weekend, the UFC was finishing up their final little run here at Fight Island in Abu Dhabi. And I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about the whole fight card, but we had Khabib Nurmagomedov, the 155-pound champion, taking on Justin Gaethje, who was considered the interim champion. Khabib had some issues when the whole COVID thing broke out of being able to fight. Earlier this year, he was supposed to fight Tony Ferguson in a dream match that has been scheduled and rescheduled over and over again. Never took place. Ultimately, Khabib's dad got COVID and didn't make it. And in the meantime, Tony Ferguson fought Gaethje, and Gaethje destroyed him. And so that set up a title fight this past Saturday between Justin Gaethje and Khabib. A lot of people thought Gaethje may have had a puncher's chance, but Khabib is considered to easily be the best lightweight in the history of the UFC's short history here. And Gaethje fought a pretty decent first round. He actually, a couple judges awarded him the first round. And in the second round, Khabib just did what he wanted. He basically put his will of wanting to wrestle Gaethje, and he shot on him, finished him with a second round submission with a triangle choke. The big story, though, was after this took place, Khabib, this is his first fight without his dad. I guess his dad was one of his trainers. He cornered him, and they were very close. And the loss of his father has been very difficult on him and his family. And so after the fight, he pulled his gloves off, laid him in the ring, and he said that was going to be his last fight in the UFC. He talked it over with his mom. His mom didn't feel like it was right for him to continue to fight without having his father around. So he promised his mother that was going to be his last fight. And fighters retire all the time, and then they come back, but I believe that this was the last we'll see of Khabib. This guy's just a different character. Now, I'm not going to say that maybe a year from now, once we're in a whole different era, we're getting past COVID, and his family has had time to heal and reflect. Maybe his mom has a change of heart. Maybe he has a change of heart. Who knows? But for the time being, Khabib has left the UFC, and while ordinarily you would say a fighter that magnitude leaves a gaping hole, actually, that vacates the title, and we might have us a title match in January with Conor McGregor returning to fight Dustin Poirier. Now, this fight was not intended to be a title fight, and I actually don't even think it's official yet. Conor McGregor wants to fight in Jerry World, which would be nice because it'd be nice to have someone that wants to fight in that stadium instead of laying down like the Cowboys are currently doing. But Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier may end up being a title fight that takes place in January. That would work out great for the UFC to have Conor McGregor, who for a while there was the face of the UFC, and then for a while we didn't even see him fight. You know, he's in, he's out, he's fighting, he's not fighting, all that stuff. It'd be nice for the UFC to have him back to the forefront. So we may have Conor McGregor against Dustin Poirier, and probably the winner of that fight will take on Gaethje going forward. But if that is indeed the last we've seen of Khabib, he has left the octagon, he left the cage, and now has entered the conversation of greatest of all time, pound for pound, in the UFC's short history. So we wish him well. Guys, last week we put a Choice of the Voice question up. You can still check it out on Facebook. It's still on our page, asking you to list one of your favorite Monday Night Football moments. We will discuss that next week. We're not going to get to that this week, so you still have time to answer it if you've not done that. Think of all the many great memories through the years that took place on Monday Night Football, and give us your opinion on one of your favorites, or great moments, great games, tragic moments, whatever. It's your choice. It's your voice. And finally, I just wanted to go back to the Washington football team. Ron Rivera finished on Monday his round of chemotherapy and proton therapy. Man, I can't imagine this guy has been just surviving the rigors of being an NFL head coach during an NFL season and going and taking chemotherapy while this is going on. To me, that's incredible, because I have not personally been through cancer, but know many people who have. I recently lost a friend to cancer, and I recently had a friend that beat cancer. And my father, for those of you who don't know, had a brain tumor earlier this year that he had removed, and he's doing awesome, and I couldn't be any more thankful to God for that. But getting back to Ron Rivera, to be going through chemotherapy and trying to withstand the day-to-day rigors of it being an NFL coach. I mean, you don't just show up for a 2-hour practice. I mean, these guys invest their entire lives during football season. And as much as I am not a fan of the Washington football team, I am a fan of Ron Rivera, and I hope that he gets better. He said that he was told that his cancer situation was headed in the right direction, and on Monday he got to ring the bell. So congratulations on Ron Rivera. Hope that you continue to win your fight against cancer and get back to full health. Well, folks, again, I'm sorry that I was on my own here today. I hope I didn't bore you too much. I hope that I gave you some things to think about, or maybe laugh at, or maybe be mad at me about. Whatever. I hope to have my two bros back with me next week. And again, check us out on Facebook and give us any kind of input or suggestions, opinions. We take all that. We'd love to hear from you. And we just want to thank you for listening to us each and every week. Again, hope to have my boys back with me. And in closing, I just want to say, smile. God loves you. And so do I. This has been the Sports Bros Podcast. Yes, sir.